Can people hear me out there?
Yes.
Deborah, I hear you. Okay. Looks like people are joining us. Hello, Georgia, Jennifer, Kimberly, Paul, Robert, hi. Michael, welcome. Zach, welcome. I'm just wondering if people can hear me. So if we're going to try to use the Q&A functionality in your Zoom video, so if you can locate that in your Zoom bar, that would be advisable so that we can record the different question and answers that people may be having throughout the presentation. So please use the Q&A option in your bar, and there's also a chat feature that you can definitely have conversations with everyone involved. But yet, if there's a specific question, we would like for you to use the Q&A because that's a bit more, we can actually archive that and use it for future Q&A responses for everyone. Looks like from the chat feature, folks can hear me. Thank you. So we're going to get started here. As I mentioned previously, please use the Q&A feature to ask any questions regarding the presentation. Myself, Salomon Davila, and Deborah Bird, your technical assistance providers for the CCC Maker project, will be here undertaking this short webinar to discuss the attributes of using data for your self-study. So if there's any questions that you may have regarding to any of the topics that come up through this presentation, just jot them down in that Q&A, and we'll be glad to answer them throughout the presentation or as a follow-up to yourself. So please feel welcome to do so. At the very end, we'll be also referencing the Q&As and the chats to address any globally throughout this presentation. So I'm going to get started here. Again, this particular presentation is related to the startup and how to use data regarding your startup preparations, which a lot of you have, I'm sure, a lot of urgency to get finished. Once again, we're Deborah Bird and Salomon Davila. Deborah Bird is on the Q&A, and she will answer your questions as soon as they come. So the main question that a lot of you know that we're trying to address with this startup is the outcomes that you see here regarding the vision of your particular makerspace and how to drive innovation within your community colleges. How do you help various careers that are necessitating within your specific ecosystem that you're currently mapping? And really, how is it that we address a holistic view of our spaces as we develop them, so that it doesn't just become just a technology setup, but it takes into account everyone that you're looking to serve, the students, the businesses, and even the economy in itself. In other words, the moving and shifting needs of today's economy. So what we're trying to focus on is that one item is, what existing resources of data do you have to establish what's called a baseline for your project? In other words, we're going to try to establish an understanding of where you're currently at, so that as we move forward throughout the next couple of years, that you see some progressive movement in some of these sort of dials of our usage and our growth within our specific maker spaces. And ultimately, as this process has been laid out in the design thinking aspect, is, are we asking the right questions? And that's one of the reasons why we want to make certain that you have that frame of reference when you're developing that startup self-study. So just a little bit about that. There's going to be some great regional convenings that we're going to be looking forward to announce to everyone soon, and more of that later on at the conclusion of this webinar. But design thinking has been an element that from the onset, from the advisory to the way makerspaces are meant to support our students, and of course even this particular process in itself, has been an integral part of this makerspace movement, or the maker movement. In our particular aspect to design thinking, we're trying to make certain that we have our students in mind and to address specific solutions to the human need that builds empathy, that builds sustainability within your makerspaces, and of course even considers the holistic aspect of your ecosystem. And that's why that Kumu map is so critical, because as you see the various aspects that your makerspace can be connected to, you're thinking and shaping and informing yourself on how this makerspace can address your constituents in a creative way. The empathy stems from the students that we're serving in all aspects, from their academic to their curricular, career-wise, and development of various technological, soft skills, and academic needs that they're looking to come to our community colleges. Lastly, sustainability is something that has always been on everyone's mindset as we get going. Once establishing the investment of our makerspaces, it's really the ongoing sustainable, not only in capital, but also in usage and progression through our community colleges, especially with all the various systems that are involved with institutional effectiveness, our program reviews, our different allocations of future requests. It behooves us to think of our makerspace integral to several programs, such that sustainability could be already built into this particular model. So a little preview, which a lot of you will see later on in our regional meetings, but I'm going to just do a little plug in here that we're really at the first stage of a design thinking process where we're looking for inspiration. In other words, exploring and challenging ourselves to do some research and to really define the problem as we go forth. And obviously it's in a loop system that will eventually come back and refine our particular process. But just to give you a sense of where we're at right now, a little bit more in ideation, implementation, much further along. And why do we do this? Well, you know, when we establish a concept of thinking of a solution, whatever that may be, it helps to eliminate predetermined solutions. In other words, like that image says, a person with a hammer, every problem looks to be a nail. And so, in other words, doing this process will allow us to really do a little bit of brainstorming and deconstructing of situations, so that we get away from confirmation bias. In other words, so that we don't quickly assume, oh, well, it's just this solution, that's all, it's worked before, so we're going to do it again. And so it allows for our minds to think of various aspects, and definitely in the maker movement, that's the essence of it, that we're continually refining our iteration of our solutions. And so we make certain that we have that design thinking element at the beginning. And again, a lot of this is self-imposed constraints that we typically have. Grab these solutions off the shelf, and definitely want to make certain that everyone's comfortable thinking of new solutions as we go forward in this particular project. So let's get into a little bit of the actual framework of your self-study and the questions that you may be asking. So a lot of you may be referencing the guiding questions, which we'll address a little bit later on in this presentation. But we try to condense a lot of these guiding topics into these three essential questions that your self-study should try to address. Simply put, who are your students is the first general question that you should be looking forward to addressing. What are your students telling you regarding the data? It could be quantitative or qualitative information that you may be using, surveys, for example. While the first one, who are your students, is more introspective about your demographics and maybe backgrounds and even local, regional information that you may be using. The students themselves may be telling you different aspects to careers, transfer, certificates, retraining, employment aspects of it, or even just simply interests. And lastly, how do you get all this information in your ecosystem with existing partnerships, new partnerships that you're developing, gaps with linkage to other partnerships, to help maximize the students that you're currently investigating to reach their career goals. And this really takes the concept of the network that we're trying to have you visualize literally in Kumo, so that you can take advantage of your network to help address the myriad of different data that you'll be finding throughout this aspect through the self-study in itself. So reference these 3 questions. Who are your students? What are they telling you? And what partnerships can you leverage to help them is really the essence of your self-study question. So how can you get this information with data? Well, you may want to consider several types of data. A lot of you have already engaged in the Kumu mapping aspect of it, which really is relational data. How's your network being developed? How do you link yourself to other external and internal contributors to the makerspace as you develop this aspect of a pathway for individuals that are going to be essentially going through your makerspace and your programs and extending themselves beyond your makerspace into employer sites for possible the internships that they're going to be addressing at the conclusion, at the not the termination, but at some point in their makerspace involvement, they're going to be developing some internship experiences as part of this process. And there's a lot of rich aspects to the ecosystem mapping that I think will be pervasive throughout the application of your makerspace development. Qualitative data is really what a lot of us know anecdotally through experience or observation. Hopefully you're working with a project team, and in your project team, there's a lot of input from them in terms of what they would like to see in a makerspace, how would they like to serve the students in the makerspace. And it's important that you listen to as many stakeholders currently, from the president down to maybe a technician that will help you manage the makerspace, and what their current requirements are for this particular makerspace, and how they see themselves contributing or being part of this movement. And so this is important for you to do just simply observations and experience. And you can do some surveys as well with students, and that in itself will give you quantitative from qualitative questions that you put out there for them to consider. That's always very helpful. And lastly, the quantitative data that we'll get into in a moment is really looking at what a lot of us see from our institutional research office. So this is historical data, what has happened as of recently, enrollment rates, progression of students within your program, success rates, employment rates, etc. So you're really looking backwards. And there are a lot of online databases that many of you may be aware of that you can get this information from, which I'll point out in a couple of minutes. And definitely just touching base with your institutional research office about some of this information may be of some help for some of you if you haven't done a program review or looked at your program data as of lately. So what are these different databases that you can look at? Well, they typically have demographics regarding your students from age to ethnicity to different equity gaps related to the preparedness of the students, college prepared versus coming in as basic skills, which are the large proportion of our population within the community college system. And so this is important for you to just gather to simply know who they are and how they're coming to your institution. You also want to look at socioeconomic conditions of your students. So this may be related to BOG waivers. What's the percentage of BOG waiver recipients within your program or institution? Or what's at the tail end, their potential average wage? And then specifically, the overall college wage earner, as well as if you have information regarding your particular programs and what are their success and completion of those programs. Also, a much broader sense of the labor market information, what's of high demand within your region. Because this is a statewide project, and I'm glad to say I've learned so much from some of you related to your specific focus of your makerspace, which you'll see how every one of us are different, which is great. But definitely want to look at what's your labor market and what you maybe want to target or include within your makerspace so that you're addressing a high wage, high demand occupations within your particular region. Lastly, information for your CTE programs are abound now with the launch board And some of you who participated in the Strong Workforce Program know that data for CTE programs has become very prominent in how we make our decision-making processes. So even looking at that and grouping the programs that you're looking at contributing to with your makerspace would be of some importance as well. In that last sense, the California Community College's Chancellor's Office has put together an ever-evolving CalPass Plus launch board functionality that I will recommend that you look up and get your login to access this, which gives you great focus on completion, enrollments, progression of your students within a specific pathway. And if you go far enough, you'll get some employment data in there, and I know they're looking to update that as soon as they get more current information regarding employment. And so that could be a source definitely for yourselves to look at a specific program in your particular college and get really great answers to questions that relate to a lot of this in your specific programs. There's also two other general databases that I may recommend. There's the Community College Student Success Scorecard, which is now a requirement every year. Every district has to report various aspects to their community college related to their students. And this is definitely aggregate information at this point, but there is a specific CTE requirement in there, and for which it groups all the CTE programs. Yet it can give you a baseline of where your overall college is currently at with different demographics, success milestones, completion, and transfer. And this would be something that you can measure yourself against, or at least have that as a baseline in general. And lastly, there's the U.S. Department of Education, which maintains its own college scorecard, which really is more information about the institution, the student costs, the debt that students may incur, and even the graduation rates and earnings of all aggregate students within that particular institution. So I recommend that you look at this particular website as well, because it gives you, once again, a baseline of the generality of your students within that institution and what would be the typical outcome for any one of your students within that institution, and how you measure up against that as you go forward in developing your makerspace and your innovative ways of teaching. So just a little bit about how this information can help you, because ultimately we're trying to answer those three questions: who your students are, who they are, what information do you have for them, and how are you going to serve them with the partnerships. And so the things that you want to be looking at are equity gaps that could be for non-traditional students and outreach activities to include them in your planning of your makerspace. Any culturally relevant curriculum that celebrates diversity. Sometimes when we're in the development of curriculum, if you focus on the student and what assets they bring to your classroom, developing curriculum that brings those out in the development of curriculum could be of great attributes to include their previous experience into a space where you can teach the CAD and the laser cutting and the 3D printing and the electronics, and making a design that maybe brings them a more cultural relevance, and a specific assignment would be of some interest for some of you if you know what students are being brought in to your specific program. Academic skills, combining them, contextualizing them would be of some importance to some of you, that you're trying to solve a basic skills focus. Teaching math and English within the aspects of your assignments. And lastly, how do you team up with student support to improve the completion of your program, whether it be counseling or different job preparedness, career centers, or even the internship that you're looking to plug your students in. This can also help in various aspects for considering the overall impact of your makerspace. In other words, can students afford the material that you're looking for them to obtain for a particular curriculum? How do you pay for that material? How do you sustain that? How do you schedule activities with working students? Is there an aspect to this on the weekend and the evening? and even consider aspects of competitions and scholarships for that as students integrate their activities within the makerspace. A couple things too here at the end. How do you align your makerspace by the industry that you're focusing on? The labor market information may inform you certain aspects of your local regional focus, and this can give you some prioritization of industries that you may want to go after to get those internships. So this could be opportunities that you can bring forth with this information. Participating in entrepreneurship challenges and connecting to a different industry mentorships as well. And lastly, but most importantly, what are those 21st century skills that your local employers are seeking from your graduates and from your current students? That's also very good information to have. That could be qualitative information that you can measure in terms of engagement in the job chat and the internship aspect as well. CT programs that utilize some of these skills can develop maybe alternate badging and credentialing for these skills. And you can also accelerate completion through various activities and assessments. Oops, sorry, jump there. Based on competencies. So in other words, can you refine the particular competency that you're looking for in your makerspace and actually accelerate them through these assessments? And lastly, of course, the ultimate earning potential that we want to seek with our students. So I hope this gave you a quick overview of how important it is to look at this aspect as a design thinking element as you're looking to look at this information to see the current status of your students, establish that baseline, develop the empathy that's necessary to look at the student perspective as they come into your makerspace, develop the right linkages and partnerships that are necessary to help them accelerate to a career and ultimately your program and helping them progress and be successful. This webinar will be posted on CCC Maker events, which a lot of you were able to register. You can send me any direct questions of any of those databases that you saw here, the Launchboard, which I'm very comfortable walking you through an analysis, for example. The other two, the CCC, the Chancellor's Office and the U.S. Department of Education, are a little bit more static websites, and I think those are easier to navigate, but I will definitely help you through those aspects as well. I definitely want to make certain that I also mention that myself and Deborah Bird are here to help through the self-study. We'll be reaching out to many of you related to the regional convenings that we're planning currently, and your self-study that this is mentioned for is going to be used during that regional convening when it comes to your area. Currently, we have next week, March 3rd, in the Sacramento area, already a convening. We reached out to those community colleges already. March 10th, we have an Inland Empire that we're looking to confirm. We're pretty sure what's going to happen that day, but details will be following pretty soon. And then March 24th, we have a confirmation at San Diego as well. We're looking to schedule some in Los Angeles, in the Bay Area, and in Orange County after March 24th. So that's going to happen a little bit later on in March and in April. So that gives you a sense of where we're heading there. And definitely bring your self-study for these sessions, and we can help you through that aspect. And but we definitely want to get ahead of the game and give you guys a heads up with all the data that's out there to help you through this process. At this moment, I'm going to look at the Q&A. I hopefully some of you have been participating through that, and my colleague Deborah has been actively here trying to answer them, but I'm going to try to verbalize it for those of you who haven't seen that. Give me a sec here. There was a question about labor market data. Yes, labor market data is, again, it's a historical data looking at what currently is. Actually, some labor market can also be projected, but definitely most labor market data could be static. And that's definitely something that you want to look at in terms of your potential occupations and even demand, right? If there's a higher demand in one versus others. There was a question about submitting the self-study, and I know that's in the packet. If you want to reference that through the the different methodologies to submit the self-study. And we can follow up with that for everyone if there's more questions about submitting the self-study. You definitely want to hold on to that as well for the regional meetings that we have scheduled out as well. There was a question about a template related to the self-study, and this is another reason why we did this webinar, because there's not necessarily a template. We left it kind of open for you to define what data and how you're going to address your current baseline information with your self-study. We gave you some guiding questions, which I mentioned at the very end, that you may want to consider. You can address all of those guiding questions, or you can address only a couple. The idea was to give you a methodology with data to help you address some of those questions in this webinar. So hopefully looking at some of this data can give you an essence of how you may put together a report like this. Yes, for Sacramento, we're there, Kimberly, next Friday, as a matter of fact, March 3rd. We'll follow up with you specifically if you weren't made aware regarding this, this meeting that we're up there in Sacramento. But again, if you're closer to the Bay Area, there's going to be some new dates mentioned pretty soon as well. So we'll follow up with you. Yeah, there was also a point that some of you are using other data from your research office. That's totally acceptable. This is why we left it open. Use the data that you seem the best to address your needs. And I think that's something that you have to make a decision with your stakeholders, what data you're looking at to address. And that's another reason why we left it open and not a template constrained to a specific set of data that we're having you to look at. There was a question about the meetings. March 3rd, we'll be in the Sacramento area. That's next week, next Friday. March 10th in the Inland Empire. We're looking to host it at Chafee. Again, the gentleman there is yet to confirm all the details, but it looks like it's going to happen. March 24th in San Diego. We got confirmation there from our contacts there as well. There's a lot of answered questions if you want to take a look at that as well. And also there's some chatter in the chat that I believe my colleague Deborah has been on top of, and she's been addressing some of these topics. So just to show briefly the launch board for some of you who may want to take a look at that, you do have to get a login to launch board. It doesn't just occur by going to the particular website, CalPass Plus. But once you log into with your credentials to Launchboard, this is an example of what type of information you can get. I already have it designated to a specific program at PCC for top code that you see on the top there, and you get questions like how many courses and students have been taken in your area. So here's an example that shows me the ecosystem for this particular program and how many colleges are involved in helping in this particular top code. So you get courses, students, information, and you can dig in a little deeper for your particular ones and how your students are progressing within that pathway. What's your retention? What's your persistence in this particular one? And again, I'm looking at a specific year, and it may change year to year. There's equity gaps that you can address, and even projected job openings within the regions. So here's an example. And the further you go back, the more information that you can gather, since it becomes a bit more prevalent about the employment and other information. I think I have the current year, which is 2014, 2015. So it gives you an example of some of this.
Excuse me, Salomon.
Yes, Deb.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you need to switch screens. Thank you. Thanks.
If you have any questions related to Launchboard, feel free to send me an email, and I'll be glad to give you a one-on-one on Launchboard and some of the great information that you have in here. So at this point, if there's any other questions, I think some of these would definitely follow up. And for some of you specifically, I will post this webinar, and you can reference it in the future. And we want to make certain that I also want to plug in that next week we're going to be doing a logic model webinar. And there was a mistake this morning listing the logic model webinar as literally today at the same time. I think that's just a typo with the technical provider of the website. So we make sure that it'll be posted for next March 1st. So it's next Wednesday. So same time, same channel. Well, actually, maybe different channel, maybe different link. So please look up the logic model webinar that we'll be glad to share with everyone next week. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and you have a great afternoon. And we look forward to seeing you on email or on phone. Thank you very much.